Thank you all for joining today's call hosted by the Jewish Democratic Council of America. In the more than 2 years since its founding, JDCA has established itself as the voice of Jewish Democrats, advocating for Jewish and democratic values and supporting candidates and elected officials who share those values in order to bring about political change. That's exactly what JDCA did in 2018, and it's what we'll do again in 2020 with your help. These Democrats leading in crisis calls have been a great way of amplifying Democratic voices in this unprecedented moment in American history. And today's call will feature the next generation of JDCA leaders. My name is Josh Rolnick. I'm the chair of JDCA's Next Generation Leadership Council. And one of the reasons that I got involved last year is that JDCA is really, as an organization, very effective and strategic in ways that other organizations simply cannot be. We're uniquely positioned to reach and activate Jewish voters in swing states, such as Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And those voters are going to be critical to winning back the White House this year. Last August, JDCA created the NextGen Council to bring a plurality of voices representing views from around the country to this growing organization. And we're pleased today that we have guest speakers who you will hear from in a moment from Minnesota, Los Angeles, and Brooklyn, New York. Today, NextGen members are helping JDCA expand its impact across the country in advance of the most important election of our lifetimes. I'm thrilled today's call will feature NextGen leaders reflecting on Passover in a time of adversity. On today's call, we'll ask 4 new questions that we're asking this Passover, and we'll discuss steps that we can all take to ensure next year in the White House. With that, I would like to introduce this incredible panel of Jewish leaders and NextGen members who have joined us for this call. We have Rabbi Michael Latz, the senior rabbi of Shir Tikva congregation in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and co-chair of the board of directors for Truah, a rabbinic call for human rights. A Wexner Fellow during rabbinical school, Rabbi Latz was ordained by Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. Rabbi Latz frequently writes for The Forward, and even more frequently can be found sharing insight on Twitter. Rabbi Joel Simonds is the founding executive director of the Jewish Center for Justice in Los Angeles, where he is advocating for progressive values at the local, state, and national level on behalf of the wider Jewish community. Rabbi Simonds also serves as rabbi of the synagogue for the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in Los Angeles. Lauren Baer was the 2018 Democratic nominee for U.S. Congress in Florida's 18th district. Proudly endorsed by JDCA, Lauren won more votes in the district than a Democrat ever had during a midterm election and gained national attention for her inspiring campaign. Lauren previously served as an official in the Obama administration from 2011 through 2017, acting as a senior advisor to Secretaries of State Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, and to Ambassador Samantha Power. And we're so lucky to be joined today by Elana Arian, one of the leading voices in contemporary Jewish music. Elana has served on the faculty of both Shirei Chagiga in London and the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in New York, working as a teaching artist in the Debbie Friedman School of Sacred Music. She has performed at Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, Tanglewood, and perhaps most memorably, 5 separate appearances at the Obama White House. You can find her music at AlanaArian.com. We just heard the beautiful Nigun from Elana, and we'll hear from Elana again at the end of this program, and we're really looking forward to that. But I want to start out right now by asking our rabbis, first off, 3 of our 4 new questions that we have for Passover. And I'm going to put them all out there at once, and we'll start with a discussion. I know that we're all thinking about our Seders upcoming in just over a day. First, how is this Passover different from all others? Second, how do our Jewish values inform our response to this particular crisis in this year of pandemic? And third, what lessons can we learn from the story of Passover to guide us in this moment? More specifically, Is this a plague? And is President Trump an American pharaoh? And I will, with that, throw it over to our rabbis to kick us off.
Thank you so much, and it's an honor to be on this call. It's an honor to be on this call with my dear friend and colleague Rabbi Latz, and with everyone here with JDCA, which for me has been a breath of fresh air and a much needed lifeboat during this storm of the past few years. I want to first start off by saying to the last question, no, this is not a plague. And I know that there have been cute memes and tweets and whatnot about, Passover is canceled because of a plague. When we connect coronavirus to the actual 10 plagues, I think we do a great theological disservice to our tradition and to the point of the plagues. The plagues were a tool by God to get Pharaoh to capitulate and to end the horrific slavery of the Jewish people. The plagues were meant for people who were doing horrific things to our people over centuries. The coronavirus, as we have seen, is striking anyone and everyone, and it is a horrific pandemic, and we only pray for those who have been infected by it. So I think it's very important that as we are in this moment in time, that we don't link coronavirus to the actual plagues. So I just wanted to start off by saying this. I have a lot of other questions, but Rabbi Latz, do you want to go back and forth? Do you want me to continue speaking?
I think you're great, Rabbi Simonds. I'm gonna listen to you, and I'll jump in. Okay.
So, and I also just want to say, in terms of this year, I think we should really embrace the difference of this year. I think, there's a lot of us who are saying, oh, this is going to be so difficult. I think this year is only going to be a difficult Passover if we try and make Passover this year the same as it was last year, right? That question, Manish Tanah Halal has that, how is this night different than every other night? Well, so often our Passover Seder was the same as it was last year and the year before and the year before. So it's just pretty much, how is this night different than all the other nights this past year? But really it's the same as it was the year before. I think this year we actually get to answer that question in honesty. How is this night different? Well, it's completely different because we've never lived through this before, and God willing, we never live through it again. So let's embrace the difference, and let's also embrace the fact that I think Judaism is based on brokenness, right? There's a tradition that when we were wandering through the desert within the Holy Ark, we carried the broken tablets with the full tablets. So we always carried with us brokenness. When we perform or when we engage in a wedding, we break the glass. And there are so many traditions for why we break the glass. But I think one of the traditions that we can all embrace is that at the height of our joy, we should never forget that there is brokenness in the world. And I think so often during our Seders, when we gather with family and friends and we are participating in this wonderful opportunity, we forget that there is brokenness because we're just so focused on the food and the company at the time. Well, I think this year we could actually both embrace the joy of Passover, but also finally recognize that there is brokenness. And I think with Passover, where it's always that moment where we recognize the past and the present and then the future, right? And the fact that we were all together once, and that was the original story of Passover. And ever since then, we've all been separated. And so I think our separation this year isn't anything new. But we're finally able to embrace it. And so we recall the past, our liberation story. We recall the present, our isolation and the difficulty of the time. But just like we are all trying to do with the JDCA Seder plate, we embrace the future, that God willing, this is going to end soon. And when it ends, we have to focus on those battles that are ahead. We have to focus on all those issues. So with that, I am going to pause and turn it over to my teacher and colleague, Rabbi Latz.
Thank you, Rabbi Simonds. That was beautiful. I'm thinking the thing that's going to be so different this year, besides the sense that Seder will be dramatically different for many of us, is the fact that we are all in touch with our human vulnerability this year in ways that many of us have not been. There are certainly folks who have suffered and who have felt isolated and alone, but I think that for the first time, that will be a shared experience on a much different level. And I think that we have welcomed Elijah into the Seder at the end of the Seder sort of as a gimmick. you know, it's like this cute shtick, and we sing that song from Les Mis, "Do you hear the doorbell ring?" Right? It's cute and funny, but I think that this year, Elijah feels really live about this possibility of what does redemption look like, about what does it mean to open our doors. You know, I think that one of the great tragedies of this moment is not, I want to be clear, I'm definitely a partisan and a good progressive. Donald Trump and the Republicans are not responsible for the coronavirus. They are responsible, however, for failing to plan for it. And even more than that, they are grotesquely responsible for the violence and the bigotry aimed at Asian Americans and at folks who are vulnerable and suffering. And so I want to think about how the Seder is going to be different this year. And that, to me, is for each of us an invitation to be deeply in touch with being vulnerable, but also the courage that will be necessary to open our doors to the outside world, to recognize that we should take this virus seriously and keep this social distancing, but we should not fear each other. And that there's an opportunity here to strengthen a social fabric that under 40 years of a Republican regime has frayed, and that it is our moral responsibility as Jews and Jewish Democrats to strengthen so that our most vulnerable people are treated and kept alive and healthy. I'm thinking in our tradition, there's the story of Amalek. And Amalek, as you may remember, is the one who attacks the vulnerable Jews in the back. And we focus on Amalek because of the horrors of trying to wipe out the sick, the weak, and the old. And it's a grotesque, immoral, unconscionable thing that he did. But there's an important lesson for us too that I want us to think about this Pesach. Who put the poor, the vulnerable, the weak, the infirm in the back of the line? And our Torah, and after Pesach, we get the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, and the heart of Leviticus is, the heart of our liberation story is to care for our neighbors and the most vulnerable. And so Pesach should be a profound call for a dramatic reorganization of society, that the cornerstone and central parts of our social policy must be how we care for people who are most vulnerable. And that should lead every conversation we have. And so I want us to think about, not as we as Jewish Democrats lead discussions about policies and legislation, that the first priority is who is caring for the sick, the weak, the vulnerable, and the old. That is how we make Pesach this year different from every other Pesach. It's not simply to recite the words unconsciously, but to live a story of liberation where we are the ones who are agents of freedom and human dignity for every one of our neighbors, those we love and adore, those we don't know, those we profoundly disagree with and think are absolutely wrong. That's, to me, how we bring Pesach to life this year.
Thank you, Rabbi Latz and Rabbi Simonds. So first of all, I'd love to start there, Rabbi Latz, with where you ended. You are both, you as the chair of Truah, a rabbinic call for human rights, and Rabbi Simonds as founder and now executive director of the Jewish Center for Justice. You are both deeply involved in advocacy and progressive work every day, in frankly bringing voice to those who don't have a voice. We are, as you said, Rabbi Simonds, not together this year, many of us, for these Seders. I wonder if you can reflect on the ways that your work, the work that the two of you do day in and day out, and also your work and your pastoral responsibilities will inform your Seders this year. What are the concrete ways we can kind of bring what you're talking about into action as we gather with family and friends tomorrow, either in person or via Zoom.
Thanks, Josh. You know, first of all, I hope people are only gathering in the homes in which they live with the people they live, because it's a moral responsibility of every Jew not to be an agent of spreading this virus. And so I hope you have good Seders via Zoom and don't gather in person. I would say three things, Josh, and then I'm really excited to hear my colleagues' response. One, the salt water this year, the tears are real. The tears of not being together with our families, the tears with people who are sick, the tears for the people on the front line, the tears I have over the fact that we have a president of the United States who is as morally repugnant or not more so than the Pharaoh who sat on the throne 3,000 years ago. I weep for a nation that once sent a person to the moon that cannot produce enough protective personal equipment for the people on the front lines, and every decent human being should be weeping a river as deep as the Nile for that. So that's one thing. The second thing is, one of the most deadly things the Pharaoh did and that Trump have done is to somehow tell us a story that we are powerless, we are ineffectual, and that we can't make a difference. And there is nothing more wrong than that. And so as you think about Seder tomorrow night, and as we are reenacting the liberation of our people, everybody should realize that we can't do everything, but we can do something. We can make phone calls from home or send postcards. Lauren and Carly are going to offer us some very powerful ways of getting involved in the right to vote, and how we have to ensure access to vote and at the ballot, which is so fundamentally important. And that should be taken away from our Seder as well. And the third and final point I'll make, and I really want to hear from Rabbi Simonds, is that I don't do this work, this moral activism, despite being a rabbi and a Jew. I do it because I'm a rabbi and a Jew. I do it because the central commandment of Torah is ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love our neighbors as ourselves. And that love can't be a dumb bumper sticker. It's got to be the organizing principle of our social policy and our politics. And that means we love our healthcare workers enough to pay them a livable wage and to provide them personal protective equipment so they don't get sick too. It means we love our teachers enough that we support them in their teaching. It means we love our community enough to reorganize how wealth is distributed in this country so that everybody has their basic needs met every single day. So Passover should come alive for everyone tomorrow, and really be thinking about who are the Elijahs in our lives? How do we act more like Elijah and bring redemption about for everyone? The last thing I'll say, there we got a question in chat. My t-shirt is from Truah, the Rabbinic Call for Human Rights, but I'm hopeful that this summer, you know, maybe the Jewish Dems can have t-shirts available that say next year in the White House, because Halie, I really want to go back to the Hanukkah party, and I really want to do it with a lot of my fellow progressive Jewish Dems. All right, Rabbi Simonds, I talked too much, sorry.
This is amazing, and I love what you said about the salt water. I think that is so key and so powerful this year. I think there's a few things. I'll say for us personally, every year for Passover, we get overwhelmed with the preparation. And unfortunately, at times, it's not the spiritual preparation. It's the cooking, and it's the setting of the table, and it's the fun, gimmicky stuff, because that's what we're supposed to do. And I'm not here to negate that at all. But then I think sometimes we miss the point of the story. And I think sometimes we lose the focus of the meaning of it. And I think this is a year for us to have those conversations. This is a year for us to make those phone calls, that maybe we're not preparing as much of the meal so we can prepare the heart. Maybe we're not cleaning up as much as the meal, we can clean up the mess a little bit more. And I think those are opportunities that we can deeply embrace this year. I think something that we often miss within the Passover story, because we quickly want to get to, you know, let's sing the song about the frogs jumping. This all starts when Moses is in the wilderness and is lost, and God comes to Moses in the burning bush. And the powerful thing about the burning bush, what makes the burning bush holy, is that it's burning and it's not being consumed. And I think so often we burn and we are consumed. And so although we are distant from one another, how do we use organizations like this and connections like this so that we can burn together, so that when one of us needs to take a step back, somebody will take a step forward? And so Moses draws near to that burning bush because he's amazed, because as a human, whenever he burns, he is consumed. So he wants to draw near to this. And God gives Moses the action step: go and liberate the people. And Moses' response is not, absolutely, I will. His response is what makes Moses so powerful. And his response is, who am I? Right? Mi anochi. Who am I that you have sent me to do this? I stutter. I am not worthy of this. And I think that's what makes him so powerful. And we gloss over that. And that is one of the most powerful things about being an advocate, right? Being an advocate is not sitting there saying, absolutely, I can do it. Being an advocate is recognizing that I am just one person, but I'm just one person that has this inner strength, that has this inner fire. And sometimes we need somebody else to light that fire within us. And we miss that on Passover because we're so consumed with the gefilte fish. And I think it's our opportunity this year to recognize that key moment, that the whole reason why this was started is because one person, that somebody else saw some greatness in him, responded with, who am I? And I think that's how we could educate and excite everybody, from the 5-year-old at our table to the 85-year-old that's on Zoom across the world from us. Who am I? We are all someone that has a spark inside of us. And at this moment in time, like we did thousands of years ago, we all need to embrace one another distantly and march together to that concept of the promised land. And so often during Passover, we lose the concept of marching towards the promised land because we're marching just towards a really fun evening.
Thank
You should
you,
be a rabbi.
We have time for one more question in this segment, and we'll try to keep it relatively brief in response. But I do want to just ask a question about the Haggadah specifically. Rabbi Latz, when we had the opportunity to talk last week, you said, and I love this, that the story of Pesach is the story of adaptation, and also that the story begins in Egypt, but as the Haggadah ends, they're in the wilderness. And I wonder if you each could talk about the Haggadah for a minute and the story that we tell, where the parallels feel apt for you this year, and maybe where they don't, as we head into the holiday. Rabbi Simon, why don't we start with you, and then Rabbi Latz.
I think the beauty of this time and of this time in year is that we finally get a look at the Haggadah. We finally get a look at the story with new eyes. And rarely do we ever get a look at it with new eyes. Rarely do we actually ever get to kind of change our place in time. And I think this year we finally get to do it. And we get to embrace the idea of wilderness, right? Torah and revelation is not found when we are in the same place as we were yesterday and the day before. Torah and revelation is found when we are in the wilderness. We are all in our own wilderness right now. And rather than just focus on the difficulty of it, let's embrace our health, those of us that have it. Let's embrace our privilege, those of us that have it. And let's seek revelation.
That's beautiful, Rabbi. So the Haggadah is the way we've told the story for generations, and we should keep telling it. But I'm thinking about the Haggadah is told from the point of view of the Jews. I imagine that in Egypt, Pharaoh got really good press. And I think about that because I think it's really important to remember the Passover Haggadah doesn't just stop with how terrible Pharaoh was, and it doesn't just stop with the plagues. It involves the telling of our story. And I feel as though this year, we have to be talking about this epidemic. We have to talk about coronavirus and the people who are sick and suffering and on the front lines of care. And we have to talk about the policies and the systemic leadership failure on the Republican Party, especially, that led us to this moment in time. We didn't get here by accident. I was just reading earlier this morning that New Zealand had an incredible shutdown 4 weeks ago, and their cases are almost eliminated right now because they had bold, fierce, might we notice female powerful leadership, right? And I'm thinking about the way we tell the story tomorrow night and in the future. God willing, we will all on this call live for many years to come. I hope that we will always add part of the story about the Pesach we lived through coronavirus. And not just the interpersonal sufferings, the missing each other, but also Egypt wasn't just one bad guy who did bad stuff. It was an entire system of dehumanization and an entire population that colluded, either consciously or unconsciously, with Pharaoh. And I think we have a responsibility tomorrow night and Thursday night to look at the ways in which we act like Pharaoh, to look at the ways that this empire has infected our thinking and gotten us away from being people who have a responsibility for the liberation of all humanity. So I invite us to do some really hard work and not wait until Yom Kippur to do tshuva, to do repentance and atonement, but to start now on Passover, to do some of that soul work, to get rid of the chametz inside that allows us to not see our fellow human beings as fully human. That's the adaptive work, I think, this Pesach, Josh, as well as making sure you have enough prune whip with your matzah.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thanks to you both. We'll have an opportunity for questions at the end of the program. Lauren, our fourth question this year is for you, and that's an action-oriented question. The question is, what action can we take to ensure that Democrats are elected in November so that we can end our seders with next year in the White House? For this one, I'm going to ask JDCA's Director of Grassroots Organizing, Halie Pildis, and Executive Director Halie Soifer to weigh in. As she has in past calls, Halie will moderate our Q&A after we answer this final question. The format here is if you can send your questions in now via email to info@jewishdems.org. That's how we're going to be taking your questions today. Again, that's info@jewishdems.org. And now, Lauren, maybe you can help us answer our fourth question this Passover.
Sure. Thank you, Josh. And thank you for having me here today. This has been just such an incredibly thoughtful and thought-provoking conversation so far. When I think of Passover, I think of it as just a time to reflect on our collective journey from slavery to freedom. You know, it's a reminder that we were once in bondage, that we could be in bondage again, and maybe even an opportunity to think about the ways that we are in bondage now, individually and as a society. And so I've always seen Passover as a call to action for all of us to make the world more free, not only for ourselves and our loved ones, not only for fellow Jews, but especially perhaps for the least fortunate among us. And I know that this year, it can be a particularly challenging time to think about what kind of action you can take because we're all sheltering in place. We're confined within the four walls of our homes or our apartments. And so first, I just want to call out JDCA and its leadership for under these incredibly challenging and difficult circumstances, still finding a way to take action this season, still continually working hard to ensure that we elect a Democratic president in November and to ensure that we elect a Democratic Congress and Senate as well. But I also want to focus on what individuals can do and what they can do from the confines of their own living rooms. So I'm just going to lay out three simple things, all of which you can do right after this call ends, or even if you've got a computer open right now during the call. And the first thing is visiting the JDCA website in the Take Action page. That's jewishdems.org/action. And what you'll see there is a bunch of petitions where you can sign your name, asking the president, asking members of Congress to do things to ensure that we're going to have free and fair elections come November, to ensure that everyone, Democrat, Republican, Independent alike, is going to be able to cast that important ballot and have their voice heard, and specifically encouraging universal vote by mail, which we know is an essential but also a very expensive endeavor to undertake. And you'll also see other actions that you can sign your name to there, everything from encouraging this administration to protect healthcare workers, to asking President Trump to invoke the Defense Production Act to ensure that we're using the full weight of America's industrial machinery to try to protect our frontline healthcare workers. So that's item number one. It's quick and simple, and it's just a click of a button. The second thing I think folks can do is contact your elected officials. Even if you don't know who those folks are, you can visit usa.gov/elected-officials. It will enable you to look up who your senators and members of Congress are, and give you their phone numbers. Pick up the call, and whoever answers the phone, tell them that you're Jewish, and that in this season of Passover, in this time of reflection about making our country more free, there are things that you want to keep in mind while they're legislating, in particular actions you want them to take. I can tell you that those calls are actually recorded, and it does influence oftentimes the decisions that our elected officials make. So that's another way, more directly, to have your voice heard. And the third thing I want to talk about is supporting this organization. And I know this is a really, really hard time to think about giving financially. So many people are struggling right now. And if you've joined this call and you're in a position of financial insecurity, I know that everyone here wants you to think about yourself and your family and your safety first. But if you're among the fortunate this year, if your biggest challenge is juggling teleworking at home with your children, or the fact that you can't go out to your favorite restaurants with your friends right now, think about going to the JDCA website and making a contribution, not only for yourself, but for those who are unable to this year, even in a small amount. Collectively, when we pool our resources, we enable JDCA to continue to do its incredible work, and to be a collective voice for all of us. And so I think those are three quick, easy things that you can do this Passover that'll help all of us end up in a better place in November and beyond.
Hi, this is Carly. I am JDCA's new Director of Grassroots Organizing, and I just want to take a moment, first of all, and say how grateful I am to be a part of this incredible movement. Really, really proud to be here. Really believe that we have an incredible opportunity to make change here. If you have not already done so, please join a JDCA state chapter by going to our website, www.jewishdem's.org. We're organizing digitally in advance of the most important election of our lifetime, and I really hope you can join us. Our state chapters are going to be critical to getting Democratic vote out in advance of November and ensuring that we retain control of the House and take back the Senate and the White House. One thing I really want to talk to you about is May 17th, that Sunday, will be our first virtual National Day of Action. Where we're going to be coming together and taking action from our homes, from our couches, calling target states, calling members of our community and telling them why it's important to get involved in this election, and asking them to volunteer and join state chapters. We're in a critical moment where we are really building our movement, building our activist base, and building the infrastructure to have an enormous impact on election day. There are so many races in our 14 target states where the margin of victory is equal to or smaller than the size of the Jewish population. So turning out the Jewish vote is critical. And I know, that if all of you get involved, we can really take this over the finish line and win and bring forth just enormous change and a more just country in November. So please go to our website, www.jewishdems.org, and sign up for our first virtual National Day of Action. I'll be there calling away, and I hope to talk to you then. I'd like to turn it over to our JDCA Executive Director to moderate questions for our speakers.
Great, thank you so much, Carly. Thank you to Rabbi Latz and Rabbi Simonds and to Josh and Lauren. And especially thank you to Elana for sharing her music with us, and we'll hear more of it as this call proceeds. I want to remind you all to send your questions to info@jewishdems.org. We've received a few of them. We want this to be a conversation, and we're going to start answering your questions shortly. But in the meantime, we want to hear from you, Elana. Before we do, though, I just want to thank everyone on this call, but also those who aren't on this call, including the JDCA board. This NextGen leaders that you're seeing today represents a larger NextGen council of leaders throughout the country. And in addition, we've even involved the next generation with our college campus fellows. As Carly said, we're continuing to grow as we create state chapters throughout the country in the places where it matters the most, so we can get out the vote and ensure that we elect those who share our values in November. That is what this organization is so focused on. So send your questions in, we'll get to them in a moment, and over to you, Elana. Thank you. I want to say to everyone on the call that Elana is going to share one of her songs with us at the end of this call, something to look forward to. Our first question comes from Yoni in DC for our rabbis. What connection is there between freedom as embodied in the Passover story and participation and in free and fair elections? And I think it's quite a fitting day to do this as we see those having to choose between their right to vote and their own safety in Wisconsin in the primary today.
Such a great question, Yoni. Thank you. Rabbi, do you want to give it a shot? You want to try? Okay. Look, I think that the free and fair elections, what does liberation mean, right? What was Pharaoh's power about? It was about denying people having a voice in their work, in their religious lives, in their intimate lives, in the raising of their children. And that having a vote means we have the ability to exercise our voice and use our power to construct a society based upon our values. And so for me, at least, there's a direct connection between how Pharaoh set up an organized society to deny people their basic human dignity and how a democracy should function where every human over the age of 18 who's a citizen gets the right to vote and exercise their voice in the public square.
Rabbi Simonds, did you want to take that one as well?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I think that was beautiful and absolutely. And I think, you know, we're taught every generation experiences their own moment of Pharaoh, and every generation experiences this Passover tale. And that has been true since we left Egypt, that we are constantly on this cycle of bondage to freedom, from bondage to freedom. And it's a constant cycle of exercising our right to vote, exercising our right to complain. And if you look at the Passover story, from the moment we were free, we started complaining. And we joke about that, we joke about that. That becomes so much of our Jewish narrative, but we never take that seriously, that we were finally able to complain without retribution. We were finally able to voice our disgust and our concern, and voice our disgust and our concern to the top, to know everything was going to be okay. And so the freedom to be able to complain, the freedom to be able to vote, and the freedom to be able to do that and not have our lives be at risk, that's what we were pushing for.
Great. Our next question comes from Steve in Chicago. How should we talk to our friends and family who still support Donald Trump? How can we be friends with them and relate to them? And what does our Jewish values tell us in this moment as we look toward November in terms of this divide that this president has created in society?
Is that for the rabbis, Halie, or? Oof.
It is.
Wow. So there's this amazing midrash in the tradition where the rabbis ask the question, why does the V'ahavta read that you should place these words al livavecha, upon your heart, and not place them bilvavecha, in your heart? And the rabbis throughout this Talmudic sugya, this passage, have lots of interesting answers, but where they land is this, and that is, you place the words upon your heart because throughout daily life, our hearts get hardened and calcified. And that at some point, for some reason, often mysterious and unknown to us, our hearts majestically crack open and the words of Torah and of love sink in. And I would say that that's an apt midrash for your relationship with your Trump-loving family and friends. Keep in conversation. Keep sharing what matters most to you, what your deepest values are, why you as a Jew support the humane policies of treating immigrants with dignity because it comes straight from the Torah, treating women like human beings, that sort of stuff. That those are your deeply held religious values, and hope and pray in gentle, loving, but firm dialogue about your values and what you believe, that eventually the Torah of your heart will sink in to theirs. And simultaneous to that, contribute everything you can to progressive organizations, support the Jewish Dems, walk your block when you can, call like hell, organize like hell, and make sure that we win in November and repudiate Trump to the dustbin of history.
Beautiful. Listen, I think the ninth plague, the plague of darkness, never really went away. It was just diminished. And we're taught in the tradition that, okay, so what? It was dark, but the tradition suggests that the plague of darkness, what made it a plague was that there was such darkness that one could not see their neighbor, that we could not hear their pain or feel their cry or really connect to them. And this is why, we say that the plague never went away. It still lurks back into people. And I think those of us that have an opportunity to see our neighbors and to feel their pain, we're blessed that we are no longer within that plague of darkness. And I think those family and friends that still feel that Trump is a good president and still support him, I would go far as to say is that they are trapped in that plague of darkness. And we never want to punish anyone for being in the plague of darkness. We want to do all we can to let them see the light. And for those of us, I think, that have felt the light and that have felt that embrace, I think it's our opportunity. Every year we come to the High Holy Days, and we don't just say the words of Teshuvah, we embrace Teshuvah, that everybody has an opportunity to repent and has an opportunity to turn. And I believe in hope in people. If not, we wouldn't be doing this. So I believe there's hope. And if it's not for us to help them turn, then who is going to help them turn? Fox News? And so I think we have to take it upon ourselves to help everyone do Teshuvah and to help everyone rid themselves of that darkness.
And I would actually add here maybe a lesson that I learned on the campaign trail, which is that convincing people of a certain opinion or belief usually works best when you don't engage in telling, but when you ask someone questions, what they believe, how they feel, and that if you're sitting around a virtual Seder table with your Trump-loving relatives, I might start by inquiring what their Jewish values are, how they motivate them in their day-to-day action, and whether and how they see those values reflected in our current leader. That will probably provoke a conversation. And out of that conversation, maybe they'll come to see that Trump is not the best reflection of what they hold in their heart and in their faith. So that would be my advice.
Great. Our final question comes from from Brad from LA. He asked, while every poll shows that Jewish Americans continue to support Democrats at between 70 to 80%, Jewish Republicans continue to beat the drums, insisting Jews are moving toward the GOP due to the current president's purported strong support of Israel. As a result, what is the JDCA and Democrats doing to shore up strong Democratic support among the Jewish community this November? So, Brad, I'll take this one. You're right that an overwhelming majority of Jews are Democrats. That has been the case consistently for decades. And despite the fact that Donald Trump himself and other Republicans have said that their share of the Jewish vote might be growing, the polls show us that that's actually not the truth. That Jews are strongly remaining in their political home, which has been and will continue to be the Democratic Party, and that's because Democrats, the policies the Democratic Party supports are aligned with our values. So we don't see that changing, and JDCA will do everything we can to organize in the key states and districts this election to ensure that the Jewish vote gets out in support of Democratic candidates running for the House, Senate, and our Democratic presidential nominee for the White House. So JDCA is doing everything we can to ensure that not only that Jews continue to support Democrats, increases this November. Before I turn it over to Elana, I want to give a shout out to Zach from Indiana, Jen from Baltimore, Sam from DC, and Maya from Texas for filling out and completing the JDCA advocacy bingo. We appreciate the fact that you took the time to do it. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's in our weekly update. We included a bingo card. Everybody seems to be getting in on the bingo action here in our quarantines. But importantly, included a lot of action items that Lauren mentioned as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Elana to lead us in a Mishaberach and for her to share her beautiful song with us as we conclude our call. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's just been an honor to be present for such wise words of Torah and to be part of really important action to move us forward in pursuit of our values. We'll take a moment now for a Mishaberach prayer, calling to mind the thousands and thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands of human beings on this earth who are in need of healing, healing of body, healing of spirit. And we'll ask you to say in your own homes, aloud or to yourselves, names of people that you're holding dear, and hope that in gathering and saying this prayer together that we can give each other strength and comfort to take these next steps forward in strength. of strength, who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Amen. We're going to close this call today after so much inspiring teaching and conversation about ways that we can use our voices in pursuit of our Jewish values and our democratic values, ways that we can use our voices to call our representatives, ways we can use our voices to take action to protect voting rights, ways we can use our voices when it's safe to walk our blocks and speak to our neighbors and engage in thoughtful, curious conversations with our Trump-loving friends and relatives. I'd love to share this song. It's called I Have a Voice, and there is a call and response in it. So I'm going to teach you how it goes. The chorus is like this. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Try with me. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Change the world. Okay, repeat after me. I will open my eyes. I will open my eyes. I will not look away. I will not look away. I will use this gift I've been given every day. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Change the world. I will give of myself. I will give of myself. I will reach out my hand. I will use this heart I've been given to take a stand. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Change the world. A word of blessing from our daily blessings, our morning blessings, thanking God for giving us so many divine gifts in God's image. Perhaps most importantly, the gift to be able to raise our voices and stand up for what's right. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asanu b'tselem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Anu B'Tselem Elohim. I have a voice, my voice is powerful, my voice can change the world. I have a voice, my voice is powerful, yeah, my voice can change the world. I change the world. Last time, repeat after me. I will fight for the truth. I will fight for the truth. I'll stand up for what's right. I'll stand up for what's right. I will use this strength I've been given to be a light. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. I have a voice. My voice is powerful. My voice can change the world. Change the world. Chag Sameach.
Thank you so much, Elana, for reminding us that music can bring us together so beautifully, even when we are squares on a computer screen. Thank you. That was so beautiful and so moving. And thanks to all of our participants. Thanks to those who asked questions today. And we really just want to wish you a happy Passover, Hag Sameach. We do know that this year's Passover is going to be very different in so many ways from those in the past, but we hope you find joy around your tables with your loved ones, whether you are fortunate enough to be with them in quarantine or whether it's via Zoom. So Hag Sameach to everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.